To make place is to make community. To make community is to create connectivity. To create connectivity is to create pathways for healing and support. So architecture it's at the bedrock of that.
Hello and welcome to the Architecture Beyond podcast, where we explore how design, creativity, and purpose shape the world around us. I'm your host, Brandon Gibbs, architect founder of Iamthestudio. On every episode, we sit down leaders, impact, change makers who are using design thinking in powerful, unexpected ways. And so today, I'm happy to be joined by Chris Goode, a visionary entrepreneur and community builder from Kansas City. Chris is the founder of Ruby Jean's Juicery, a mission-driven company inspired, and I'll let him go into that a little bit later. And also, he's done some awesome projects, both with architecture, both with design, both with health, and just a really great topic. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, talk about this intersection of health and wellness and impact in architecture.
Yeah, I think it's definitely very much connecting with what architects want to do in terms of bringing better and healthier cities, healthier buildings. So, like businesses, local leaders who are doing that and, doing projects that bring that out is definitely a very just inspiring mission. I have a couple questions just to get started. Just to find out a little bit about the impact and some of those organizations that you're leading and partnering with, like great partners like Populous. And I guess could you tell us about your journey growing up in Kansas City, and how did Ruby Jean's story and your personal experience lead you toward a mission rooted in health and equity?
Absolutely. So, born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Love Kansas City, Missouri. My pops, my dad and my mom started having kids very early in life, and it creates a level of difficulty financially and many other ways. And so, I was the youngest of four kids. I am the youngest of four kids between my parents, and with them starting to have kids at age 16, my dad spent a lot of time away figuring himself out, figuring out how he would provide for four kids, so on and so forth. And what that lent itself to was a lot of time with my mom, and namely my grandmother, Ruby Jean. And so we lived on the east side of Kansas City. I live on the east side of Kansas City today, a street over from the street that we lived on early on. But my grandmother got to play a really big part in my life, and we spent a lot of time at her house. And so the times that I remember centering my mind around family, they all happened at my grandma's house, and we lived right down the street in a tiny duplex. And so we would run up and down this street back and forth from home to grandma's house, and my grandmother really helped my mom connect the dots, whether it meant us spending time at her house, whether it meant my grandmother preparing meals. And I grew really fond of my grandmother. She was a woman of very, very few words. She would just give you one of those black grandma looks, and you would know what time it was, And so she was a very powerful, very poised, very supportive being. And this grandmother that I fell in love with, that I just adored, that I love spending time with, she ended up getting sick. What from a young person's mind, it seemed really fast. And, when I was 14 years old, my grandmother ended up in the hospital, primarily struggling with difficulties from type 2 diabetes. And, the time that we spent there was short. It went really fast, and they sent her to another hospital to try and, one last ditch effort to try and save her. It was unsuccessful. My grandmother ended up on life support. And at that time, my great grandmother still lived in Oklahoma, where my family is from on my mom's side. And so we sent for my great grandmother to come and say goodbye to my grandma. And my great grandma comes up by Greyhound bus back then. So either not my grandmother or my great grandmother ever learned to drive a car. And, so they sent for my great grandma to come to Kansas City and say goodbye to her baby. And after doing so, my great grandma spent that final hour with my grandmother, Ruby Jean, and mom, as we affectionately called my great grandmother. Mom came back out to the waiting room, looked around at everybody, took this big attempted gasp for air, and my great grandmother would end up having a massive heart attack right in the
Wow.
waiting room of the hospital that my grandmother lay on, life support down the hall. And so as a 14-year-old kid, encountering grief at such a scale, at such a magnitude was something that I'll never forget. And it changed me. I know now how it changed me. Back then, I had these kind of quiet murmurs to myself, like, man, I gotta tell people about my grandma. I have to. They had this superpower, and my mother still has it. But they had very little resources at their disposal. But I never knew. I never like connected us as being poor or not having, or the 2-bedroom duplex that we were living in. It didn't. It was just normal life. But what I realized is that they had this ability to exude a high level of joy, a high level of composure, a high level of poise in the midst of nothingness, in the midst of despair. And now as an adult, I think like, wow, how could they even carry that kind of a posture? Like I never felt stress from them.
Mm.
But that would lead me to want to start something that not just honored my grandmother Ruby Jean, but really honored the Ruby Jeans, the families, the uncles, the aunts, the moms, the dads, the brothers that still exist on our planet, that still are living a lifestyle that will lead to the same outcome my grandmother faced. And so in 2015, and this is a shortened version, after being introduced to Juice by way of a couple of friends of mine that moved to Los Angeles, they showed me this documentary and it blew my mind. This guy changed his life in 60 days by way of doing a very difficult, very challenging juice cleanse. And so that hit me. I realized that, wow, my grandma lived 61 years and she never had that come to Jesus moment, that moment where it's like, oh, I gotta change something. Like I'm in and out of dialysis or the hospital because of XYZ. She literally ate soul food is all she knew until it killed her. And fast forward in 2015, by the grace of God, I was given an opportunity I wasn't really given an opportunity. I took an opportunity to leave my corporate role as an insurance adjuster and put everything I had into this tiny 700 square foot space. And now, a decade later, Ruby Jean's Juicery is still in existence, and we're still pushing and growing. But that's the condensed, shortened version of why Ruby Jean's and why I started.
Wow. Wow. And I know it's such a touching story, but it's like you sort of took that energy to go forward and also just touch a generation. Um, Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah. I guess it's so interesting that with a such a big mission, um, you knew that it had to expand. When did you first begin to see that the environment around us, like our neighborhoods, public spaces, and design, could be that point for influencing community?
Um, I think it's something that subconsciously I saw a long time ago. My dad would take me to these stairs that we'll talk about today
Yeah.
when I was 14 years old. Um, and I think that's when the seed was like, wow, we're using this public space to better ourselves, for me to get better and get more in shape for football. And so subconsciously that was like the first seed. And then you become an adult, come home from college, and you start surveying the landscape, and it just I think it's from my mom, but I have a heart of service. Like what fills my cup is trying to fill other people's cups in different ways. And so that naturally leads you to look at, like, well, what's the environment like in our neighborhoods? You know, what are our parks like? What is aesthetically, what does it look like? What do we have access to? What don't we have access to? And I got to serve on the Parks and Rec board here in Kansas City for 2 years. And it really, really was an opportunity to sit at the table and really see up close the level of disparity that exists between zip codes in the same exact city. The people that have the same tax structure, that have to pay the same taxes into the city, getting varying experiences and ROI on said tax money. And so I got to start looking at it, and it is disheartening because you hear this sensationalism around, you know, whether it's gun violence, which is a huge issue across America, and in Kansas City is something we've really, really struggled with. But when I would hear about it, you know, it's like, oh, these young black kids are killing each other and so on and so forth, and the guns and the this. But what I would never hear is that, oh, we can focus, the data will show us the zip codes, narrow down where things are happening. Primarily, the worst outcomes, the least life expectancy, literal indications that something's off, and it's in these same zip codes. And then you start to look at the zip codes and you look at the neighborhoods, and it's bleak. You know, the parks are in bad shape. The pools are not opening when they're supposed to, if they open at all. The houses are, there's a burned down house. There's a house. There's a burned down house. The food options, the cleanliness, and I could keep going on and on and on. And it's like, it's disheartening because you realize, like, oh, these kids aren't just becoming young adults and just full of fury and picking up guns and pointing them at each other. They're displaying outcomes of their learned and lived environment. The environment around them is lending them to fury. It's lending them to strife. It's lending them to disappointment. It's lending them to lack. And so, you know, it's one thing to know that, but then it's another thing to say, well, how? That's a big thing. Like, what's my role in that?
Wow. Yeah. It's getting that high level view and then connecting the dots that are like a lot of people they don't see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's even like the idea is even some architects, you know, just because we looked at, you know, buildings down from above, like we don't actually see that. And so it's like, I think the service and the environmental connection puts that more clear in perspective.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I guess like with that understanding, like how did architecture and place become part of your storytelling? Because and your advocacy for health and connected communities. How did architecture play that role? Because I think some people might never think about the architecture of it. You know, like
Yeah, I mean, placemaking is a huge answer, you know, to a lot of hard questions. To make place is to make community. To make community is to create connectivity. To create connectivity is to create healing, pathways for healing and support, and avenues and relief. And so architecture you know, it's at the bedrock of that. You about to say something?
yeah, no, that's actually super. That's very like to the point. I love that because yeah, that understanding of how to really bring those things together. It's like again, there's a lot of people struggling who either don't have the high level view to see what's causing it, and then the idea is yeah, architecture is it's not a privileged few. Like I think one of the things that really drew me back to architecture, and you know, like again, being part of NOMA, NOMA has one of the missions of equity. It looks at community. We're not just, oh look, let's serve the elite. it's supposed to be for everyone. That's
Yeah.
public architecture.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And the things that are for everyone, um, are often like in reality at the very core of that statement. It's supposed to be for everyone. It seems to be few and far between those opportunities that service everyone. There's in multiple cities across America. You drive through one neighborhood and you're like, oh, and then you're like, whoa, what happened? What shifted? Where did I go? Like why am I here and it's so much different than there? And that's everywhere. And so those opportunities that are for everyone are not just readily falling out the sky for us. They're left for us to create. And so I found a lot of passion in being a creator of spaces, of placemaking, and doing things in places that people have decidedly unseen or undone or unkept. So yeah.
Yeah, and that builds definitely the great groundwork for talking about how we get to the Paseo Stairs project, because and I'll let you introduce that,
Yeah.
because it has become a meaningful symbol for Kansas City and the United States in terms of like, hey, look, this is a vision that even though I'll let you go into some of the obstacles, but the idea is like this is easier to happen someplace. It needs to be happening. What did it mean to you personally? And I guess you do sort of introduce that project and how it got started.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the Paseo Stairs, that seed was planted, like I said, by my dad many years ago. I was a young kid wanting to play football, and begrudgingly, trying to train for football. So my pops, having graduated from Paseo High School, my mom too, he's like, hey, well, I know where to take you. And so he used to have to run these stairs. And so on weekends, we would go down to the Paseo Stairs. He's got his stopwatch, he's got his whistle, and I'm running sprints up the stairs, trying to get in shape, for football. And at that point, I had this like deep seated disdain for the Paseo Stairs. I did not enjoy it at all. This anxious feeling even driving to it, like,
Being honest, yeah.
yeah, like, oh God, we got to go do the stairs. But then you grow up, and I became a man, and college football is over. It's real life, for real, for real. But one of the things I know about myself is that, when I'm not active, when I'm not being conscious about what I eat, it affects my mental. It affects my whole being. And so I was trying to find ways to do things that I like to stay active. And so the Paseo Stairs come to my mind. And so I started going to the Paseo Stairs. At this point, I've done them so many times. It's not as laborious as it was, but I love running stairs. And I would start to realize that I would go to other stairs in other cities. And when I would go to these other cities, there would be like food trucks at the top and bottom. You'd hear music. There'd be so many people. You're like dodging people. It'd be hard to find a place to park. And then I would come home to Kansas City, and it's just me, or it's just one other person. And then the onion starts to unfold more, and I start to look around like, well, dang, it looks a little different at our stairs than these other stairs. It's kind of trashy. The concrete's kind of corroding. And man, you start to look at it. And so I started inviting people to the stairs. I started having 50, 60, 75 people coming to the stairs on a Saturday morning early to run or walk the stairs.
Yeah.
I would do that for quite a while. And then it would hit me that I had this passion for the stairs. And I said, well, dang, when I get some money, I'm going to fix these stairs up. And, the idea of money now being real, it's like, well, shoot, I don't know when I'm gonna have enough discretionary income to fix up some stairs. And so I put the idea out. It's been over 6 years ago now, actually, and I just put it out on Facebook. I said, this is my idea, and it quickly, yes, we love it. Yeah, absolutely, we need it. Thank you. The news, like, hey, can we come and talk to you at the stairs?
Mm-hmm.
All the excitement. And here I am, 6 years later, still engaging community, still I've raised the money, lost it for various reasons, re-raising the money.
You're telling like the story of a dream will always go through that. It's like it has to hit the ground first because the idea is like so. Just to share with the audience, like I know some people know about this project, but the idea is NOMA. We featured it, and you know, talking about a dream. It's like if a dream didn't have to go through anything, it wouldn't just be. It'd just be like an order. You just say do it, and
Yeah,
so the idea is spreading that vision. You know, you can see the potential, and the idea is it's just like a great business idea. Like like that person had to go and carry that till it hit someone who would accept it.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's why it's like, hey, look, there you've got something here, and I want that to continue to fruition because a lot of cities are going through something and they don't know where to find their way. And the idea that's what like even enacting the NOMA crowd like because I see, hey, look, there's some people who can implement this and like maybe that could build some energy back. We know that, hey, everything didn't start like even like New York. Like New York had a public park only after there were some major champions for, hey, look, this needs to be something like Central Park didn't just happen, you
mm,
know? And so the idea is for you to find that value in Paseo in Kansas City in that neighborhood, like that might be overlooked by others. Like that's all it takes. It doesn't, like it's so easy. Like, oh, look, let's find something in a nicer part of town. So
yeah.
that's where it's connecting with me. Because I'm also like a bit of a world traveler, so it's like, yeah, I can see things, and I'm like, hey, this should be here. This, it sounds so right.
This episode of Architecture Beyond covers the topic of architecture, community impact, and wellness with entrepreneur Chris Goode. Chris has become a leading voice in shaping healthier communities through Ruby Jean's Juicery, through advocacy, and through creative collaboration like Paseo Stairs with architecture firm Populous and local Missouri leaders. That brings art, design, and public good together in Kansas City. His mission reminds us how deeply the built environment influences our health, opportunity, and connection in place. Today's episode is brought to you by CDP Architecture. Founded by Chad DePoke in 2007, CDP Architecture focuses on giving you a personalized experience through thoughtful and creative design. Whether you're planning a community gathering space or your next home, the CDP approach combines practical vision with artistic care so your space delivers lasting value and joy. Visit cdparchitecture.com to explore their projects and click Contact Us to start the conversation about your next design.
I think that's what hits my next question, because this project did bring together community voices and design leaders, including Populous, though obviously Al is not here. So, but the idea is, I guess, how did that collaboration start, and how did it elevate both design and community engagement, and like even speaking prophetically, saying for what it will do.
Yeah, absolutely. So the
Yeah.
stairs, very simple idea to redevelop this iconic historic set of stairs has commonly been used for outdoor recreation and fitness, but has never been cared for. It hasn't been touched since 1941. So this idea of reimagining them into a free health and wellness space for the east side of Kansas City, a very disinvested in swath of our city, when I put the idea out, I didn't even know the requirement that, an architecture firm would have such a big role in it. And so I put the idea out, and this is around 2020 when Populous came into the fold. My neighbor at the time, he had heard me talking about it. He had caught wind of the idea, and he's like, and he worked at Populous in. And so he's like, this seems like something that I should introduce, to Populous. And I'm like, sure, like, yeah, any help, yeah, absolutely. And, much to Populous's credit, when I sat down and I pitched the idea to them, it wasn't like a hesitation of like, oh, this is a cool thing. It was like where do we sign up? How do we help? What do you need?
Yeah.
And that led to them actually, the team, the actual Populous team coming out and serving, cleaning up trash with us, pulling out invasive honeysuckle, the principal now of the entire company globally out there pulling weeds and picking up trash, and really literally getting into the weeds with us, as well as them donating over $100,000 in services, and now being identified as the design partner from the public infrastructure money that I've lobbied for. And so Populous has been really, really very important to this journey. Their tangible investment has been powerful, but it's also given me the ability as a storyteller to visually have something to share, because as an architect, what somebody can see versus what they can hear is two different things. And so me saying things where people can audibly hear the vision, that can go okay. But then me being able to say something where they can hear me and then hand them something that says, hey, this is what it could look like. This is a starting point. This allowed the conversations to be, so much more intuitive, and allow people to be able to see more of what I see, but only through the support of Populous.
Yeah, and the idea is, and Populous is, I think a lot of the audience would know, in the design world, know of Populous, and know, they're designing stadiums, world class centers around the world for communities, and the idea is like obviously, for a large client, that's super. Hey, look, they're doing it for like a major, football team or something. But the idea is to engage in a community support effort. The idea is like they're seeing that energy and meeting it. So I definitely applaud them for that, and I definitely applaud I think in NOMA featuring this project as well, the idea, because there's a lot of NOMA leaders. And so National Organization of Minority Architects, we come from a lot of the communities that were overlooked, overrepresented. So the idea is the effort to see that value, and also just to share it. It's that's something. It seems natural, but if I did not see my colleagues doing it, I wouldn't do. It would be like I'd be at the one standing out, in my city. There was not a NOMA chapter when I came, and I would go, and the idea is not saying that I see there's other movements and architects trying to push forward for maybe green design, or other sort of sustainable initiatives, but the idea is equity, environmental justice, those things are also very important, because it has to come together. It's not going to be you're doing one thing for one part. And I think that's where I sort of see that leadership, and the idea is I want to help support it, and that spread as well. And so this type of vision, yeah. So as we hear the story, hear it, we'll see that it grows, because the idea, the people who need to make certain decisions, they will see that. And architects, that is what we can help, because the idea is everyone has that creative gift, your creative entrepreneurial gift, and bringing the memory from your grandmother, and those moments with your father, that's where it seems hey, look, that should connect with an architect, and that architect can find that passion. And so that's super beautiful. And I'm seeing it as built, if you build it, it's not like that movie, The Field of Dreams, if you build it, they'll come. It's more like if you draw it, if you talk about it, if you visualize it, it will come. My next question is, from your perspective, how can projects like this, as it comes to fruition, and it will, how can that guide other visionary series? I guess people who are maybe a little bit unsure, just taking that first step of saying, hey, look, this is important. What can they learn? Yeah.
I think it's really, really important, whether it be for entrepreneurs, prospective entrepreneurs, architects, prospective architects, to from my lens, to land on something that really, really, really moves you, but not just moves you, has the ability to also move the lineage, move the community, move things forward, move people forward more than just you. So it's like started a passion that you feel very, very, strongly about, but then connect that to how does that extrapolate out to the broader community. And I've been fortunate enough to do that. My grandmother, working backwards, I wish that she had more incentive in her proximity, in her near proximity to say, oh, I'm gonna go walk this beautiful set of stairs. Like, oh, there's fresh fruits and veggies at this garden, Oh, just by virtue of the environment around her, lending its support to her longevity. I wish she had that. And so now I get the opportunity to have this central focus of incremental development around a healthier existence being made tangible in everything that I touch, whether it's culturally re-identifying the names of assets so that they culturally align with us, the Paseo Stairs, and creating vitality and opportunities for that in areas that it didn't exist, our garden project, our business being the first ever healthy on the east side. And so I have my central focus, I've extrapolated it out, and then everything that I'm working on, it lives around that core focus.
Well, yeah, and right now, even today, like in terms of with Ruby Jean's Juicery, you're using spaces to bring health to community. I guess, how have you seen, your space do that? Because the idea is you get to do that every day. Then, just and also, it's hard, but you're spreading it. Like I believe it. I'm seeing it.
Man,
Yeah.
it's beautiful because, this location picked me. It was the day old bread store when I was a little boy. I went to daycare across the street as a low income kid. And this building that I've always known, I got an opportunity to first start a business there. And I kind of questioned it at first. But then I sat with it. I prayed on it. I'm like, whoa, this is exactly why you do this. But it's the first ever healthy business and still the only 100% health focused food business to ever exist on the east side of Kansas City, ever in the history of Kansas City, Missouri. And so just by virtue of existing, we do that. But then we take it a step further. Now as owners of this real estate, we convene, there's community. We have an art show on Friday. There's a local saxophonist that comes and he plays 2 Fridays of the month. We have pop-ups for Black businesses and artists. We make space. We allow our space. We have a food drive coming up, to help with the needs of the SNAP deficit that's going on in partnership with a local school and a local radio station. And I could keep going on and on and on. And so, our purpose to exist there is real. Yes, we have to keep the lights on. Yes, we got to sell enough smoothies and juice and food to keep moving forward. But I didn't start this thinking about money. I didn't start it thinking about trends and juice and, who's looking good I didn't start it for any of that. I started it because I wish my grandmother could have heard somebody's voice that sounds like me, that's talking about what I'm talking about, that's talking about what you and I are talking about. I wish she had that privilege, and she didn't. And so now I'm making sure that our business serves that, even if everybody can't afford it. Now we've started Ruby Jean's Foundation in a way to just close this loop of access, and not just access to food, access to knowledge and a heart prick that moves your posture towards action. It says like man, I love my grandbabies. I love my kids. It's no fried chicken in the world that's that good to cost me time with my boys. I got 2 little boys, and I don't eat perfect by any means, but I have a level of consciousness around what I put in my mouth, and it's connected to my children and wanting to make sure that they get as much time with me as they can, and I get as much time with them as I can. And so, long-winded way to say a lot of ways that we show up for community through our business.
That's awesome. And just even like my firm. I'm project manager. We do a lot of restaurants, and I'm seeing so many lessons, and we'll see how we can. Even if you're interested for AIA Tennessee, I'm seeing some connection because like food service spaces, like the first food service is a restaurant. The next food service is bringing people back to health, because we wouldn't need a hospital if restaurants were doing more of that work, and that's what I'm understanding. Let's talk just sort of just finalizing, getting where that message, like where can that affect architects? What can architects and city designers learn from entrepreneurs sort of with that life vision, and who see health and mission as part of the design responsibility? What's that first step?
Architects have the opportunity to be firefighters. And I know this sounds crazy. It's like, where is this going? But, firefighters, they don't, God is good, 'cause I didn't think of this before. This just hit me right now. But firefighters they have to save the day. They don't get to run away from the fire. They don't get to say, oh, there's somebody in that building. That sucks. We'll pray for them. They don't get to take a passive stance. They have to go and they have to put out the fire. And so in architecture, if we look at our communities and we really look at the outcomes and we really look at the root causes and the circumstances facing our communities, where you are, where I am, where so many people are, and you say, well, man, they're in distress. Like that's a crisis. And all of these things are, and so if you look at the built environment that crisis lives in, architects have the opportunity to identify how to make these spaces better for people, how to make community through gathering spaces, through the way people use transit, through the way they walk, and which ways they go, and which ways they look, and which ways the sun hits, and you really get to design and be contributors to what God already created, and make it more conducive to healing, to safety, to abundance, to aesthetics that are not naturally seen in our communities. And so architects, by virtue of a lot of schooling, and you get to hold God's ink pen.
Wow. Yeah. You're like, that's like telling a toddler who thinks they can change the world, hey, you can do it. That, like, the idea, it's there. That's very inspiring, and I hope architects we listen, because I definitely, again, I'm just inspired, and I know that message iterated, like when we believe it, that's the first step.
100%.
Well, also, how can we strengthen the partnership between civic leaders, business owners, and architects to design with empathy and impact, and get those projects past the hurdles that sometimes are coming?
Yeah, we just have to do it. I think it takes a lot of empathy to lend that kind of time to prototype out ideas, because to reimagine cities and to reimagine neighborhoods, again, even if I'm as passionate as I can be and I work as hard as I can work and do all the things, I can't take my garden. I had a landscape architecture company donate services to our community garden site, Ruby Jean's Garden. And being able to be armed with a conceptual rendering that says, these trees go over here, the husbandry area will be over here. It allows me, where is this at? I can't find it right off the bat, but
we'll have some links. Definitely.
Okay. But being able to
the audience, you can find out, and just get started.
Being able
find
to
out where those places
with,
are too, and visit those places. Yeah,
absolutely. Being able to partner with civic leaders and thought leaders and compassionate leaders through the tangible gift of architecture and understanding that it's powerful, arming people with the right visuals to say, hey, this is what this could be. Now, we got to go find the resources to make it, but at least you can see this could be like this. It doesn't have to be like it is today. And if we make it how we've painted this picture, if we get to do that, if we get the opportunity, these are the outcomes that could be tied to that. And if those outcomes include a potential enhancement to life expectancy, did you really donate the time? you know? Did you really donate the time, or did you put a seed into something that's so powerful that you can never ever be paid enough for it?
Wow. Well, that is so inspiring, and I know it's going to happen as we continue to share that vision again, both living and breathing and sharing that. Well, Chris, that's been an awesome vision, and it's been an awesome set of points that the audience, everyone can find the links. That we will get the links that we will share sort of with the episode. I guess just where can people find out more about Ruby Jean's Juicery, Ruby Jean's Foundation, what you're doing, and how can they get involved? I guess.
So our website is www.rubyjeansjuicery.com. That's our business. We ship all over America. We're in a number of Whole Foods across America as well. And our foundation is rubyjeansfoundation.com. There's a link to the Paseo Stairs there. The Paseo Stairs has its own website. It's thepaseostairs.com. And, I'm also on social media at Genuine Juice Guy.
Well, nice one. Definitely. This is someone to follow, someone to participate in, support. And we will, as we see that vision come into life, both for Kansas City and other places, this is definitely going to be something that's going to provide better and be something that we can also participate in as we are just seeing a better future. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining the show. And also just to the audience, find those links. What were your thoughts on the episode? Do you have some ideas for different places to be developed? I'm interested to find out. And also, just as you connect, look at for what's going on for the coming year. There's a lot of different conferences coming up, and we have some excellent topics. So definitely follow Architecture Beyond, check out some of the surveys, and keep us in touch with what's going on. And I hope to see you in the next one.
This episode of Architecture Beyond covers the topic of architecture, community impact, and wellness with entrepreneur Chris Goode. Chris has become a leading voice in shaping healthier communities through Ruby Jean's Juicery, through advocacy, and through creative collaboration like Paseo Stairs with architecture firm Populous and local Missouri leaders. That brings art, design, and public good together in Kansas City. His mission reminds us how deeply the built environment influences our health, opportunity, and connection in place. Today's episode is brought to you by CDP Architecture. Founded by Chad DePoke in 2007, CDP Architecture focuses on giving you a personalized experience through thoughtful and creative design. Whether you're planning a community gathering space or your next home, the CDP approach combines practical vision with artistic care so your space delivers lasting value and joy. Visit cdparchitecture.com to explore their projects and click Contact Us to start the conversation about your next design.